You've been lied to about electricity, and the proof is sitting in your bank account right now. Go pull up your utility bill from last month. Look at that number. Now multiply it by 12. Now multiply that by the last decade you've been paying it. That figure, that slow financial hemorrhage, exists because someone convinced you that making your own power requires a $20,000 solar array on your roof or a wind turbine the size of a telephone pole in your backyard. You believed it. We all sat there writing checks to the power company month after month because the only alternative we were ever shown looked like a second mortgage. Think about that for a second. The knowledge to generate electricity from a wood stove and 2 strips of metal has existed since before your great-grandparents were born. But the financial machine around energy, the installers, the panel manufacturers, the grid operators collecting their monthly cut, none of them benefit from you knowing that a $40 thermoelectric generator snapped onto your existing stove can charge your phone indefinitely. None of them profit when you realize a stream behind your property and a micro turbine the size of a water bottle can run your emergency lights all winter. This isn't some fringe conspiracy. It's basic economics. Industries don't advertise the cheap solution when the expensive one pays their salaries. So they let you believe the only path to energy independence runs through a financing agreement and a roof full of glass. They let you believe that without sun or wind, you're helpless. That without the grid, you're in the dark. You're not helpless. You never were. You were just expensive to keep ignorant. And that ignorance has a price tag you've been paying every single month without questioning it. The storm hits, the power goes out, and you sit there in the dark feeling vulnerable, maybe even scared because no one ever told you that the same stove keeping you warm could also keep your lights on. No one mentioned that the creek 50 feet from your house is a power plant you've been ignoring your entire life. What I'm about to walk you through isn't theoretical. It's not a lab experiment or a Silicon Valley pitch deck. These are methods that predate the electrical grid itself. Methods that got buried under marketing budgets and monthly billing cycles. And once you see how they work, you're going to feel 2 things simultaneously. Relief that the solution is this accessible, and a slow burn of anger at how long you went without knowing it. Now let's do the math that nobody at your power company wants you to sit down and actually calculate. A micro hydro setup, the kind running off a creek with a few feet of elevation drop over 100 yards, produces continuous watts around the clock. That's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with no fuel bill, no meter ticking, no rate hike letter arriving every spring. People in Appalachia and the Alaskan backcountry have been running freezers off half-mile creek lines for decades. The upfront cost is real, pipes, and a small turbine. But here's the number that should make your stomach turn. The average American household pays somewhere around $1,400 a year in electricity. Over 20 years, that's $28,000 fed directly into a utility company's revenue stream. A small hydro rig, if you have even modest running water, pays for itself in under 3 years and then generates power for free, quietly while you sleep for the next 15 to 20 years beyond that. You're not saving money. You're refusing to hand over a mid-sized sedan's worth of cash to a company that did nothing except own the wire between you and a distant turbine. But say you don't have a creek. Say you're stuck somewhere flat and dry and still. Here's where the economics get almost insulting. A single potato or lemon wired with copper and zinc produces less voltage than the cheapest battery you'd grab off a gas station rack, the one that cost you $1.29. But wire a few dozen of those together in series and parallel, and you've got enough juice to run a radio or keep an LED burning. People have done exactly this in remote war zones and on boats at sea, using aluminum cans, old nails, and strips of copper pipe to maintain critical communications. The raw materials cost pennies. The knowledge costs nothing. Yet most people will spend their entire lives buying disposable batteries at a 4,000% markup over the chemical energy sitting in their kitchen pantry because nobody ever told them the science they learned in 7th grade was actually functional. And then there's the most honest exchange rate of all, your own body. A hand-crank generator converts 3 minutes of effort into enough stored energy for bright LED light, a phone charge, or 30 minutes of weather alerts when the grid is down. 3 minutes. Think about what 3 minutes of your labor is worth at your current wage. If you earn $20 an hour, 3 minutes cost you exactly $1. $1 of your physical effort. And you've produced what the utility company would charge you for anyway. Except you owe no one. No bill, no infrastructure fee, no delivery charge, no renewable energy surcharge tacked on by a legislature you never voted for. Your muscles become the grid, and suddenly the economics flip completely. Every watt you generate yourself is a watt you never purchase again, which means every minute of cranking is... Here's the thing, nobody frames correctly. Every restaurant kitchen in America vents enough thermal energy into the sky to power a small neighborhood's lights. Every hospital laundry facility bleeds heat into the atmosphere like an open wound. That energy already exists, it was already paid for, and it vanishes. Not because capturing it is impossible, but because the ownership structure of the grid has zero incentive to let you reclaim what you already burned money to create. This is the part where the effort narrative falls apart completely. You were told the story goes like this: work hard, pay your bill, flip the switch, but zoom out and watch what actually happens to the energy economy around you. A factory in rural Alaska runs diesel generators, and the exhaust heat alone could keep freezers humming and phone towers alive for weeks. They know this. They have known this for decades. An organic Rankine cycle generator, a device roughly the size of a suitcase, takes that leftover heat, vaporizes a working fluid, spins a turbine, and hands you electricity from energy you already purchased. Fishermen off the coast of Maine run navigation lights all night, using nothing but residual engine warmth from the afternoon's haul. No new fuel burned, no new meter spinning. So why isn't this common knowledge? Well, why isn't every diner owner in Nebraska running their walk-in cooler on recaptured fryer exhaust? Because the moment you stop wasting energy, you stop being a customer. The grid doesn't sell you watts because you need them. It sells you watts because you've been trained to believe the only legitimate path from dark to light runs through their meter. Every joule that escapes your kitchen ceiling, every degree of warmth your car engine dumps into the parking lot air, that's not inefficiency from their perspective. That's your dependency being maintained. Think about what this means for the average person cranking a hand generator or rigging a micro hydro setup in their backyard. You sweat, you problem solve, you feel resourceful, and you are, but the system you're working around was never designed to be hard to escape by accident. The difficulty is the product. Remote clinics in northern Canada keep vaccines cold and radios powered using waste heat recovery, not because they discovered some exotic technology, but because they had no choice but to see what was always there. The rest of us have a choice, and that choice is carefully made invisible. The real stratification isn't between people who have electricity and people who don't. It's between people who own the infrastructure that converts your already spent energy into their recurring revenue, and people who pay twice for the same heat, once to create it, once to replace what it could have done. You cook dinner, the warmth rises through your vent hood, and somewhere a utility company books another kilowatt-hour sale for the air conditioning you now need because your kitchen is hot. That is not a flaw in the system. That is the system. And the strangest part is how little hardware stands between you and breaking that loop. A small turbine, a working fluid, a heat exchanger. The components exist. The physics is settled. What keeps most people locked out isn't engineering complexity. It's the simple fact that nobody with a financial stake in your monthly bill is ever going to hand you the diagram. Which brings us to something even more portable, something that fits in your pocket and quietly sidesteps the entire plug-and-forget model the grid depends on. Here's the part most people skip because it sounds too stupid to matter. You have been throwing money into the garbage can your entire life, one dead remote control at a time. Not metaphorically. Literally, every AA cell you tossed after your TV clicker stopped responding, still had anywhere from 15 to 40% of its charge sitting inside the casing, doing absolutely nothing in a landfill. Exposed to that fact, the natural reaction is to shrug. What are you going to do with a half-dead battery? Nothing useful? Right? Wrong. And the reason it feels useless is because you have been trained by the plug-and-forget economy to think in terms of full charge or no charge, on or off, buy new or throw away. That binary is the old habit, and here is the single boring action that kills it. Get a voltage meter, not a fancy one. The $3 kind from any hardware store or online listing, the ones that look like a toy calculator with two metal prongs. Starting tonight, every time you pull a battery out of something that stopped working, you touch those prongs to the terminals and read the number. A AA cell is rated at 1.5 volts. If your meter reads anything above 0.8, that battery is not dead. It is just too weak for whatever greedy device spit it out. You drop it into a jar. That is the entire action. Test, read, sort. No wiring, no soldering, no project. Just a jar filling up on your shelf. Now here is where the boring becomes powerful. Once that jar has 10, 15, 20 cells in it, you have options that did not exist before. 4 of those half-spent batteries wired in series still produce enough combined voltage to run a radio for days. 6 of them can keep an LED emergency light burning through an entire blackout. Aid workers in disaster zones have been doing exactly this for decades, pulling cells out of rubble, testing them, combining them into packs that power communication equipment when nothing else works. Survivalists call it scavenger building. Economists would call it extracting residual value from a discarded asset. You can call it whatever you want, but the math does not lie. If the average household throws away roughly 50 batteries a year, and half of those still hold usable charge, you're looking at 25 free energy units annually that cost you $0 and required 0 generation. You just stopped wasting them. The same logic scales to movement. That shake flashlight collecting dust in your junk drawer operates on a magnet sliding through copper coils. No battery, no charge cycle, just your wrist. Piezoelectric lighters work the same way, converting pressure into a spark. These are not science projects. They are finished products already sitting in your house, already capable of producing small currents, already ignored because the grid made them feel pointless. The action is identical to the battery jar. Stop discarding, start sorting. Identify what in your environment already converts energy and stop treating it like a novelty. One jar, one cheap meter, one new reflex every time something dies. That is not a strategy. That is a muscle memory replacement, a 3-second interruption wedged into the moment your hand reaches for the trash can. And once that reflex exists, you stop seeing dead devices and start seeing a network of tiny reserves waiting to be combined, stretched, and deployed the instant the grid decides to remind you how dependent you were. So here's the part nobody wants to hear because it sounds too small to matter. You do not need a fortune. You need a buffer. That is the entire promise. And I refuse to dress it up as anything grander. A buffer is not wealth. A buffer is the difference between making a decision because you chose it and making a decision because Thursday's bill forced your hand. Think of it like that retired machinist in rural Ohio who collects dead car batteries from junkyards and cracked solar garden lights nobody wants. He's not building a power plant. He's building enough juice to run a refrigerator, charge a laptop, keep a radio alive, 50 watts. That is all. But those 50 watts mean he never has to beg the grid for permission to keep his food cold. Your financial version of 50 watts is 3 months of bare expenses sitting in an account so boring you forget the password. That is your microgrid. That is your exit door. And I want to be painfully honest with you right now. Nothing I have walked you through in this video will make you rich. Not next month, not next year, maybe not ever. If someone promises you compound returns that turn pocket change into a penthouse, they are selling you the same centralized fantasy that one giant power plant sells a whole state. The idea that one single source will handle everything forever. We have already seen how that story ends. Hurricane hits, the plant goes dark, and a million people sit in silence waiting for someone else to fix it. Your money works the same way when it is all inside one system you do not control. What I am promising instead is smaller and more real. You get the right to pause, the right to say no to a job that is grinding you into powder, the right to sit out one bad market cycle without liquidating at the worst possible moment, the right to keep your essentials running, your rent, your groceries, your kids' medicine, even when the larger financial grid around you is flickering. That is not a fantasy, that is a survival perimeter. Built the same way villagers in Nepal build microhydro setups from bicycle parts and local streams. Ugly, unglamorous, held together with patience and whatever you can scrap from your current paycheck. Here is your single action, and I mean single. Before you close this video, open whatever account holds your checking balance and set up an automatic transfer. Pick an amount so embarrassingly small that you would be ashamed to brag about it. $20, $15. Whatever does not trigger a fight with your next grocery run. Root it somewhere, you will not touch it. Do not calculate the compound interest. Do not project it forward 10 years on a spreadsheet. Just let it exist, the way a hand crank generator exists in a blackout, not powering a mansion, just keeping one light on so you can see the next step in front of you. You can stop watching me after this. You can unsubscribe, forget every concept, delete your notes. That is your exit, right? And I am handing it to you openly. But if the only thing that survives from this entire video is that tiny automatic transfer ticking away in the background, you will have something almost nobody around you has built, a sliver of independence that does not depend on the market being kind, your boss being generous, or the economy cooperating. It is not pretty.